Good day. We're going to continue our lecture, this time on ecological succession. I'd advise you to copy down the target. So, one thing that we need to know, you're probably already aware of it, but in biology, things are changing. They're not staying the same. And the environment, the ecosystem, has to be able to respond to those changes. And we call those changes the disturbances. Those disturbances are temporary, not forever, but temporary changes. Remember, we say that an environment can adapt and change, and it can be big changes sometimes. So, some of those would be storms. Uh, that's a weather thing, not a climate thing. So, temporary. We have fires. Those are, again, temporary. They can make big changes really quickly, though. Droughts, flooding. You can probably think of some others. There was a picture of the back a couple slides. There's the picture of the oil spill, like we have right here off the coast of Santa Barbara. So, flooding, overgrazing. We talked about this with the kaibab deer population when the sheep came in and overgrazed, and there wasn't enough food for the kaibab deer in the area. Human activity, like you saw with the pollution, that can make the differences. And then volcanoes can make huge differences. Those are huge natural disasters. A meteorite would be something else that's huge. So think about this, make a prediction. How might a disturbance lead to some positive effects? Seems a little harder to think that a volcano or a fire or a flood could lead to something positive. So here we have an example of disturbance. This big tree has fallen, and it's in the rainforest. And one of the things that does is it opens up the lower levels to getting some sunlight. All these plants are competing for light that they wouldn't normally get. And now that that tree is not there, they can get that light. So all these tiny little plants normally don't get it. Tree falls down, they get the light. And that can lead to new things, and we increase our biodiversity. Where's that word? Right there. We increase our biodiversity. Right, so I want you to do, I have this linked in Schoology. I'm not going to play it for you here because this is going up on YouTube. I'm not taking credit for this video. This is done by National Geographic. It's their work. So go ahead and you can pause this video and open up that giant sequoias need fire. And it's going to talk about how that fire helps that plant actually survive and thrive. It needs the fire as part of its life cycle. Okay, so ecological succession is how do we get this new life into the area after disturbance? So primary succession is when you start from absolute nothing. This is in Hawaii on the Big Island, and this is from an eruption of Kilauea, and it just leveled the area with rock. This is all lava that's cooled down. It's all basaltic lava, and it's just rock. Things don't really grow on rock, so it's lifeless right now. But over the years, that's going to start changing. So we can go from bare rock all the way to a climax community. That may take decades, it may take hundreds of years, but you can do it. You can go all the way from rock to a full-grown forest. So some of those first things that come in, and we see these lichens here, they're kind of like moss, but they use different photosynthetic pathways. You can notice that it's orange and green and yellow instead of the regular chlorophyll A, the green color. But we use these different minerals from the area. We're getting water from the atmosphere, and they're going to help break down this rock because they're using those minerals, and they're going to die, and they're going to end up turning into soil. So pioneer species are some of the first ones to go in there. Right. So after that, you have your annuals. So you start getting those grasses and plants that come back, and they germinate, they grow, they fly, and they die. They grow, they flower, and they die kind of within 1 year. Their seeds were probably carried by the wind or some other animal. After that, you get perennials. You get grasses and flowers and things that return every year. So now that there's a little bit of soil, some of those seeds get left back from one season, they come back the next year. Eventually you start getting lignified things that have soft wood, a little bit of bark on them, and they're more tolerant to some more sun because they're out in the open, or rougher winds and things like that. So these small shrubs and things out here in this forest. And then eventually you get your climax community where you have your full-grown forest with different layers and lots of biodiversity. And it's actually, you'll see different parts because different disturbances will happen, but eventually you're going to get to your climax community. And if this stays too long as a climax community, you actually start to have problems as well. And we've been seeing this in areas where we've been maintaining fires and keeping them from coming into an area, and it actually lowers the health of the forest if you don't have those fires. So what we call this is secondary succession, is after these small disturbances. So if you had a little fire, a tree falls down, you still have your normal stuff, but then you go right into your pioneer species. It doesn't take as long because you're not starting from just bare rock. So if you're starting from fire, a tree falling, a flood, or something like that, you still have soil and vegetation left behind. Whereas if you're in primary succession, you're starting from rock. So primary succession rock, and starting from some soil, you have secondary species. And if you look at the time frame, we're looking at 150 years instead of hundreds and hundreds of years going to the climax community. Right. Here's another video. Mount St. Helens erupted back in May 27th or 28th of 1980. And there's another video here I want you to watch, so exit this and go watch the video. And that's going to help give you an idea of how long it takes for things to come back. And then I want you to think about this question. Describe the relationship among biodiversity and ecological succession and ecological niches. So we talked about how that primary succession, that secondary succession could lead to more biodiversity. What does that have to do with an ecological niche? So watch this video from Crash Course. Again, this is linked in Schoology, and that's going to help you answer this question. Again, these questions are going to show up on your quiz. Alright, so what's a keystone species? Keystone species are species that are critical to the survival of an ecosystem. Lots of different aspects of that ecosystem are needed to interact with this species, this keystone species. And then we have an indicator species, which indicates the health of a specific ecosystem. So they're slightly different. Sometimes they're related to one another, and I want you to watch this video to find out about that. So again, this is also linked in Schoology for you to watch to help you learn more about keystone species. So once you're done, go ahead and write your questions and your summary. I picked this picture of the salmon because this is a keystone species in our area. This was actually taken right on the American River Parkway about 2 years ago. And what happens, we have the salmon run every fall, and they come into the river, they spawn, and they die. And that's actually really important. Their death puts the minerals and molecules and all those things that the soil needs, goes back into the soil, decomposes, and it helps growth. So things, you'll see lots of birds come and eat the carcasses. That supports the birds. The minerals support the vegetation, so they're all very important. Thank you very much, and I hope that helped.